Albert Einstein, a name that has become synonymous with genius, still captivates the world even decades after his passing. His theories of relativity reshaped the very foundations of physics and our understanding of the universe. But as much as his work revolutionized science, there is one thing about Einstein that still sparks intrigue: his death. Though we remember Einstein for his groundbreaking theories, the way he passed away is often overshadowed by the legacy he left behind. Today, we're going to explore the events surrounding the final days of this brilliant mind, shedding light on the mysteries that continue to surround his passing. Now, before we dive into the details, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below and let's connect. And if you haven't yet, be sure to hit that subscribe button and like the video so you don't miss out on more deep dives into history's most intriguing figures. Albert Einstein wasn't just a theoretical physicist, he was the personification of genius. Born on March 14, 1879, in the city of Ulm, Germany, Einstein grew up in an environment that encouraged his interest in science and mathematics. From a young age, his exceptional abilities were evident, but it was during his youth that he began to shape the theories that would later alter the course of physics. However, his journey wasn't without challenges. He had difficulties in school, particularly with the rigidity of the German educational system, which didn't foster the creativity that Einstein so highly valued. At the age of 26, Einstein published the paper that would change everything, on the electrodynamics of moving bodies, where he introduced the theory of special relativity. This theory not only challenged traditional understandings of space and time, but it also suggested that time could be flexible depending on the speed at which an object moved. Einstein's discovery opened the doors for modern physics, altering the way we perceive the universe. He didn't stop there, and in 1915, his general theory of relativity, which dealt with gravity, introduced the idea that gravity wasn't just a simple force, but rather a curvature in space-time caused by the mass of objects. This theory challenged concepts established by Isaac Newton, catapulting Einstein to the forefront of scientific development in the 20th century. His contributions weren't limited to just theoretical physics. Einstein was also an advocate for peace, social justice, and civil liberties, being a vocal opponent of totalitarianism, racism, and war. When the Nazis came to power in Germany, Einstein, who was Jewish, was forced to leave his homeland and move to the United States, where he would spend the rest of his life. In the United States, Einstein continued to work as a professor and researcher, especially at the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, where he spent his final years. His groundbreaking discoveries helped propel physics to new heights, but at the same time his name became a cultural icon, representing not just brilliance, but also the fight for freedom and justice. In the final years of his life, Albert Einstein experienced a quieter but still productive phase, though his health was increasingly fragile. He had moved to the United States in 1933, fleeing the rise of the Nazi regime in Germany, and settled in Princeton, New Jersey. Over the decades that followed, he continued to be an active presence in the academic world, although age and health problems began to take their toll. Although Einstein was in his 70s when he settled in Princeton, he did not retire from the world of science. However, as the 1950s progressed, his body was far from the same. Health issues, such as high blood pressure, heart disease, and arthritis began to manifest, which made him reduce his activities. In 1949, he was diagnosed with an aortic aneurysm, a serious heart condition, although he continued working, not allowing these conditions to limit his passion for physics. Einstein saw himself as a man of revolutionary ideas, but also someone with a personal life marked by struggles. He had lost his first wife, Mileva Maric, with whom he had 2 children, Hans Albert and Eduard. Their relationship deteriorated, and Einstein remarried Elsa Löwenthal in 1919. Elsa was his cousin, and the couple moved to the United States after Adolf Hitler rose to power. Though Einstein had a somewhat tumultuous love life, his marriage to Elsa brought him some emotional relief. However, she would also suffer from health issues, and her death in 1936 would leave Einstein in emotional solitude. In the last years of his life, Einstein began to distance himself a bit from pure science, though he still pondered concepts like the unification of the forces of nature, a project he saw as the next big step. After relativity, even as his health deteriorated, he never stopped thinking about the most profound questions in physics and philosophy. During his final days, Einstein was aware of his health condition and spent much of his time reflecting on ideas, though he remained deeply accessible to friends and colleagues. He didn't seem to fear death, but he was conscious of its inevitability. What seemed clear was that his mind was still fully active, reflecting the genius he had always been. Albert Einstein passed away on April 18, 1955, at the age of 76, in Princeton, New Jersey, after suffering a rupture of an aortic aneurysm. His death was sudden and unexpected, occurring during a quiet night while he was resting in his home. Although his health had been deteriorating due to heart issues and high blood pressure, no one anticipated that his death would come so swiftly. The aortic aneurysm, a condition in which part of the aorta, the body's largest blood vessel, becomes enlarged and can rupture, causing severe internal bleeding, is often a silent disease. Einstein had been diagnosed with this condition years before his death, yet he continued to lead a relatively normal life. The rupture of the aneurysm was quick, and he was rushed to the hospital where the doctors were unable to save him. The news of his death spread quickly around the world, shocking the scientific community and the public at large. Einstein was not just a renowned scientist, he was a cultural icon, and his loss was felt around the globe. His contributions to physics and humanity were unparalleled, and many saw his death as the end of an era. The reactions to Einstein's death were varied, but all highlighted his enormous influence. Scientists from all over the world mourned the loss of one of history's greatest geniuses, while the general public remembered him not only as a physicist, but as a symbol of wisdom, compassion, and ethics. Many politicians and world leaders also paid tribute, recognizing Einstein's role not just in advancing science, but in advocating for social and political causes. Despite the grief and mourning, Einstein had left behind a legacy so vast that his death did not diminish his impact. On the contrary, his passing led to a renewed interest in his discoveries and the philosophy he promoted. It was as though his absence amplified his presence in scientific and cultural thought. After Albert Einstein's death, one of the most controversial and mysterious parts of his story involved his brain. Unlike most people, the pathologist Thomas Stultz Harvey, who performed the autopsy on Einstein, made the decision to remove Einstein's brain without the explicit consent of his family. He claimed that studying the brain could provide valuable insights into the brain structure of one of the greatest minds in history. However, this action raised ethical and moral questions that continue to spark debate to this day. Einstein's brain was carefully preserved in several sections, and Harvey took the pieces to his laboratory in Princeton, where he began conducting initial studies. This decision, made without the consent of Einstein's family, caused great controversy. Einstein's daughter, Hans Albert, and other family members were shocked by the lack of respect for their father's privacy. Many questioned whether this was a violation of his dignity, considering that Einstein had never expressed an interest in having his brain studied after his death. For decades, Einstein's brain remained a secret, with Harvey conducting various experiments to try and find a scientific explanation for Einstein's genius. Some unusual features were discovered, such as a thicker cortex in the parietal lobe, the area of the brain associated with mathematical and spatial abilities. This detail led some to believe that there was something special about Einstein's brain anatomy, which could have contributed to his extraordinary intelligence. However, these discoveries were not conclusive and did not fully explain the origin of his genius. In the following years, Einstein's brain was shared with other researchers who continued the studies, but the conclusions were far from proving a direct relationship between brain structure and intellectual excellence. Many scientists later argued that studying a person's brain alone could not explain the complexity of their mind, and that Einstein's intelligence was more than something that could be found in his cerebral anatomy. The issue of Einstein's brain remains a controversial point in the story of his death. While some believe that the research on his brain was a legitimate attempt to understand genius, others see it as a violation of respect for his memory. The case became a fascinating part of Einstein's legacy, a mix of science and ethics, and an example of how even the greatest geniuses can be subjected to treatments that raise difficult questions. One of the most fascinating and mysterious stories surrounding Albert Einstein's death relates to his last words. According to reports, Einstein reportedly spoke something in German during his final moments, but no one was present to understand what he was saying. The only person in the room was a nurse who did not speak German, and thus the great genius's final words remain shrouded in mystery. This incident turned into a legend, and since then Einstein's last words have been a subject of speculation. The story was sensationalized, creating a great mystery about what he might have said. Some claimed that he must have expressed a profound or philosophical thought, something that reflected his complex and unique mind. Others suggested that he could have spoken about science or the cosmos, reflecting on the fundamental questions of the universe until his last moment. There are even those who believe that he might have said something related to his work, perhaps an idea he had not yet shared with the world. However, what truly happened in that moment remains unknown. The fact is that, like many stories of historical figures, Einstein's last words became part of his mythology. A combination of reverence for his genius and the lack of a direct witness fueled the creation of this myth. And of course, like with any such iconic figure, the desire to attribute a final great revelation to Einstein only added to the mystery surrounding his death. At some point, the narrative that he had uttered something incomprehensible in German transformed into a search for the truth of Einstein's last words. Some historians have tried to investigate further, but the conclusion has always been the same. No one knows for sure what he said. This lingering doubt only amplified the legend. Perhaps in some way this is fitting for a person like Einstein, whose life and work defied common understandings of space, time, and even reality. Still, the legend of Einstein's last words causes us to reflect on the meaning of his life and the impact of his brilliant mind. The lack of clarity about what he said in his death only adds to the mystique of a figure who, even after his passing, continues to inspire questions and fascination. Albert Einstein wasn't just a name that made history in classrooms or scientific laboratories. His death in 1955 did not mark the end of his influence. On the contrary, it only further cemented his place in history. His legacy goes beyond the scientific discoveries that reshaped modern physics. He became a symbol of intelligence, insatiable curiosity, and a commitment to humanity. His life and work still resonate across many fields, from physics to popular culture, and even politics and ethics. Einstein's impact on physics is unparalleled. His theories of special and general relativity revolutionized the way we understand time, space, gravity, and even light. His most famous equation, EmC2 demonstrated that mass and energy are interchangeable, an idea that helped lay the foundation for nuclear energy, both for good and for ill. His contributions weren't just confined to these grand theories. He also made significant advancements in other areas, such as quantum theory, which helped establish the foundations for modern physics. But Einstein's legacy isn't confined to just theoretical physics. He also became a cultural figure, an icon of wisdom and rationality. His image was used everywhere, from advertising campaigns to movies, books, and even T-shirts. He became a universal symbol of genius, often cited as the ultimate example of someone representing brilliance in its purest form. Even those who know nothing about his theories know what he represents. Einstein was also a man of principles, and his life wasn't limited to science. He was a passionate advocate for peace, human rights, and freedom of expression. Throughout his life, he vehemently opposed war, extreme nationalism, and racism. During World War II, although a committed pacifist, Einstein was one of the people who alerted President Franklin D. Roosevelt about the possibility of Nazi Germany developing nuclear weapons, which led to the creation of the Manhattan Project. Although he would later regret signing the letter that initiated the project, his awareness of the dangers of science in the wrong hands reflected a deep ethical concern about the use of knowledge. His morality and personal beliefs were also a significant part of his legacy. Einstein remained steadfast in his convictions, even when they put him at odds with many of his colleagues. He was a defender of free thought and peaceful dissent, qualities that are essential not only to science but to society in general. His political activism, including his support for civil rights and his pacifism after World War II, shaped the image many had of him not just as a scientist, but as a philosopher and humanitarian. Einstein never was just a genius in a laboratory. He used his platform to influence politics and society in profound ways. His voice is still heard today in discussions about ethics, science, and philosophy. When we talk about innovation, scientific ethics, or even social and political issues, Einstein's name always comes up as a reference point. Today, Einstein's legacy is also reflected in technologies that are derived from his discoveries. GPS, for example, which we use every day, would not work correctly without taking relativity theory into account. His contributions to physics not only altered our understanding of the cosmos, but also helped develop technologies that have shaped the modern world. Therefore, what Einstein left behind is not just a collection of equations and theories, but a way of looking at the world, with curiosity and a commitment to the common good. His death didn't erase his influence. Instead, it transformed it into an eternal flame, kindled in the minds of all those who continue to learn from and be inspired by his legacy. Albert Einstein's life and death continue to be sources of fascination and reflection, much more than a simple biography of a scientist. He wasn't just a genius whose discoveries transformed modern physics, but a man of principles whose view of the world and ethics profoundly impacted society and culture. His death in 1955 didn't mark the end of his influence. On the contrary, it began an era in which his legacy would be cultivated and revered across generations. Through his scientific theories, Einstein redefined the way we perceive the universe. His equation E-mc2e, mc2e, mc2, and his theories of special and general relativity forever changed the field of physics, providing a foundation for new technologies and understandings. However, his contribution wasn't just to the world of science. Einstein was also an advocate for peace, human rights, and his opposition to oppression and injustice created a moral legacy that transcends the academic realm. He was a man of principles, a pacifist, and someone who deeply believed in the power of science to improve humanity, but also in the responsibilities that come with such power. Although the details of his death and the speculations surrounding Einstein's last words continue to fuel discussions, his true essence remains in his contributions to humanity. He was a figure who, throughout his life, never stopped questioning, challenging, and reflecting on the deepest questions of human existence. His scientific legacy extends to this day, but more importantly, his philosophy of life continues to be a source of inspiration. In a world that continues to evolve at a rapid pace, with new scientific discoveries and global challenges emerging daily, Einstein's lessons still resonate. His vision of a more interconnected world, where knowledge is used for the common good, remains relevant. In an era where science and ethics are often at odds, Einstein's example reminds us that the pursuit of knowledge must always be accompanied by a deep sense of moral responsibility. Ultimately, Albert Einstein is much more than the physicist who revolutionized science. He represents the relentless pursuit of truth, understanding, and the continuous improvement of the human condition. Even after his death, his influence spreads across all areas of knowledge, from philosophy to politics, and his memory will continue to inspire future generations. In a world that is increasingly complex, Einstein taught us that, in order to move forward, we must question, reflect, and always seek to understand the universe in which we live with a spirit of curiosity, humility, and compassion.